This is Wilton Town Talks. I'm your host, Ryan Vermillen.
And I'm Will Begnell.
And today we're interviewing Nick Foster. So Nick, I heard you're working on a project. Could you tell us a little bit about the project?
Sure. So at the Wilton Historical Society, we maintain a bunch of historic properties. Actually, we have 3 different campuses where we preserve and upkeep some historic buildings. Some are anywhere from 300 years old all the way back to about 80 years old. And they're a big part of the town's historical fabric. So it's important that we, preserve these buildings, and the nice thing about them is that they continue to be used, not just as educational spaces, but as places where, for housing, for local businesses. It's really a great way to sort of keep these buildings alive, and that includes everything from Wilton's first train station to an old general store to an old hay barn. So really exciting stuff that we're able to do. The big project we have coming up is actually getting a new roof for the Lambert House. And anybody who lives in Wilton has probably driven past the Lambert House a zillion times every day, because it's at the corner of Route 7 and Route 33. It's Wilton's oldest building. It's actually turning 300 this year, and was the site of a bunch of things related to the Revolutionary War. Some interesting stories about, it was a schoolhouse for a while. It was actually the site of a fairly infamous murder at one point. And now actually holds 2 residential apartments and a few local businesses. So it's important that we sort of keep this building alive. It is in desperate need of a new roof. We started re-roofing it last year, but we are interested in sort of finishing off that process, and we need community support to help that happen. Yeah, everything we do requires community support. We are a private nonprofit, but these are buildings that are significant to people. The Lambert House in particular is on the Wilton Town Seal. So if you look at the Wilton Town Seal, you're looking at one of our buildings.
How is some ways that the community can actually help restore the roof?
So the main thing that we're looking for right now is something called the Neighborhood Assistance Act. It's actually a Connecticut state program, a really great program for local businesses. Certain businesses that fall under, that are corporations, can donate their Connecticut tax burden to local nonprofits. And we're not the only nonprofit that's participating this year, which is really exciting. So even if you're not interested in supporting us, there are other nonprofits you can support. But essentially what it is that these corporations in Connecticut, they have to pay their state taxes. But if they so choose, they can say that, there's approved projects from certain nonprofits in town, of which we're one. They can, instead of paying those taxes to the state, can donate it directly to us at a 1-to-1 match. So basically every dollar that they would give to the state goes to us instead for this project. We work with several local businesses, Santa Energy, Servco, our utility company, Eversource. There's a couple of other companies that we work with that donate to us every year and help preserve these buildings, because it's such a, they view these buildings as important parts of the community. But we're not the only nonprofit participating, but it's a really simple process. It's basically one form you have to fill out, and then you can donate directly to us at basically no cost, because it's money you have to pay anyway.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about the importance of the Lambert House to Wilton. Could you just give us a little background history on the house?
Yeah, absolutely. So the house was built around 1726. It was built by David Lambert I. David was actually originally lived in Milford and then moved to Wilton in around 1726 and built the house. The Lamberts were one of the wealthiest families in Wilton throughout the 18th century. They married into quite a few prominent families. They were married into to Thomas Fitch, who was the Connecticut colonial governor right before the Revolutionary War. They married into the family that built the Gracie Mansion, where the New York mayor lives. So they were a well-connected high society family. They lived in the house up until about 1898. Many generations of the family lived there until about 1898. The last Lambert living in the house was unfortunately murdered on the front porch, which is a story for another day, but it made front page news in the New York newspapers because the Lamberts were such a prominent, well-to-do family. The house then passed through a few different cousins, actually, and then became historical society property in the 1960s when it was donated to us. And it was turned into a few different things throughout the years. It was a store. It was actually our first museum space. We have people who still visit us today who say, I remember working in the Lambert House when it was an antique store, and actually had some artwork from the Lambert House that they donated to us recently. So it really was a main focal point of the town, especially because it was on a main route going to Norwalk or to Westport. It was a tavern during the 1700s, so if you were traveling on your way to Danbury from Norwalk, The Lambert House was a place that you might have stayed and grabbed a drink, grabbed something to eat. So it continues to be a landmark. When I give directions and I say, when you get to the big white colonial house, if you're going to Norwalk, make a right.
Yeah.
So it's been really the significant Wilton homestead for a long time. And the Lamberts were heavily connected in Wilton's early history. They helped found Wilton Parish. David Lambert II founded St. Matthew's Church. So the members of the Lambert house and the Lambert family have been connected to many significant events throughout the years. So it's important that we can preserve the house and keep using it as an educational tool to tell people about these families.
Yeah.
How exactly did you get into helping out Wilton restore these significant monuments?
So I've been with the Historical Society about 10 years next year. Started out as their curator and became their director about 3 years ago. So been heavily involved in talking about preservation, not just in Wilton, but across the state. We work really closely with the State Historic Preservation Office, which helps preserve historical buildings throughout the state of Connecticut. We work also closely with the Connecticut League of Museums. They are an organization that also focuses on preservation. So there's a really tight-knit group of people who care about old buildings and want to make sure that they get preserved and stay alive. You know, we talk about the term adaptive use all the time. It's a way that historical buildings can stay lived in, can stay used. They're not just collecting dust as sort of these time capsules, but a space that people still occupy and gather in. So, you know, you can see behind you our historic properties on our museum campus that are still used for events and exhibits. So in my almost 10 years at the Historical Society, we talk about preservation all the time, and we're constantly raising funds for it because, you know, we hope that the community cares about these buildings as much as we do. So even if you're not a corporation, you can't participate in the NAA project, there's ways that you can donate to us to help make sure these buildings are around for another 300 years.
Yeah, what sparked your interest in history? Like, did you know you were interested from a young age, or was it more recent?
Yes, going back to when I was in elementary school, when we go on family vacations, I was the person who was reading every single label at a museum. So went to school for history, went to grad school for museum studies. This was my first job. Grew up in Trumbull, so local, and came back after grad school and was looking for a museum job. Found the Wilton Historical Society, and proud to call Wilton home to today. And it's a great community that does care a lot about their history. I think it's really it's noticeable how much people do care about preserving these buildings. We get emails all the time from people who've lived in these houses, worked in these houses, and share that passion that I have for making sure that stuff gets preserved. So it's exciting to see, and it's a great community to be a part of.
Yeah, I've done a couple of field trips to these places that we restored in Wilton, and they're pretty cool, to say the least.
Yeah, I think every fifth grader in Wilton comes through and either makes a candle or does some weaving at the Historical Society. So, it's experiences like that. We have people who are just graduated college and reach out to me and say, I still have the candle that I made when I was in fifth grade. So, these buildings still get used. They're still impactful to people. So I think it's important that we, keep the word out and make sure that we can continue that work and make people aware of how important it is.
I know the Lambert House was one of your main focuses, but could you tell us a little bit about the other buildings that you're trying to restore?
Yeah, sure. So one of the other buildings that we're looking at is Wilton's first train station. It was built in 1852. It actually was moved from where Wilton's current train station is now in the 1970s when it was replaced. The train coming to Wilton was a monumental thing in the 1850s, so really changed how people commuted in and out of Wilton, how commerce was done. So we have that building. It's an office space now that also needs a new roof, so we're looking for the NAA project or just donations in general to help with that as well. It's a place that saw thousands of visitors, thousands of Wiltonians in and out of for almost over 100 years. We're also looking to redo some of our HVAC and air conditioning and some of our heating and cooling services for our Cannon Corners property. So Cannon Corners is at the corner of Route 7 and Olmsted Hill Road. We have 3 historic buildings there, one of which was Wilton's last blacksmith shop. It's so important that these buildings have proper airflow, that how you prevent things like rot and water damage. You really got to make sure that they have the appropriate mechanical things to make sure that it's the climate is right for the building to be preserved. So Wilton's oldest blacksmith shop was operating until about the 1930s. And we have photos in the Wilton Bulletin of somebody working in there. So we'd love to make sure those buildings get preserved. There's an old hay barn that's also on that property. So that's our big project for this year. But throughout the year, we have 18 historic buildings that we're maintaining, some of which are a 1790s general store that's going to need some painting going forward. We're hoping to get that next year. We have an old cottage that was built in the 1820s that was for some of the farm workers who lived at Lambert Corners. It's a really, I don't want to say an odd collection of buildings, but we've been able to acquire some pretty significant structures over the years between those three campuses. So as anybody who owns a historic home knows, you're always chasing some sort of maintenance or project on it, and these things cost money, and as a nonprofit, we require the support of the community to do it. But
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want me to listen? Yeah. All right, yeah, so this is really cool that Wilton is doing this. Are there any other towns or like local cities or towns that are also doing projects like this?
Yeah, so we work in close collaboration with a lot of other historical societies in the area. I know the Easton Historical Society is also part of this NAA project, so they're looking for funders as well. We have connected with the Weston Historical Society. I have a close relationship with Darien and Norwalk, so a lot of towns in Fairfield County, whether they're participating in NAA or not, a lot of these places have their own historic buildings that again are costly to maintain, but are important parts of their respective communities. So even if you're not from Wilton and you want to get involved somehow, there's always historic structures out there that are looking for community support, and that's basically throughout New England. If you go to any New England town, they have an 18th or 19th century structure that has their museum collections that they're trying to preserve. So if you're interested in preservation, we're always happy to connect people with resources that can be helpful for that.
That's very cool. Do you guys put the white little plaques on the houses that have been along for a very long time?
Yeah, so we're in charge of the Historical Marker Project. We have a list of about almost 500 houses across Wilton that are historically significant in some way. If you're on that list, you are eligible for a plaque. There's a small fee, sort of manufacturing fee, but you get a one-year membership to the Historical Society and some pride in your home when putting the marker up. Even if you're not on that list, we're always interested in doing research on more homes. So if you think your home's historically significant, you can reach out to us. We'll do some research on the home and see if it qualifies. But as you drive around and you see those white plaques with the little bronze medallions on them, those all come from the Historical Society.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in today and telling us a little bit about your project.
Yeah, happy to join you guys. Always happy to talk about the town's history.
Absolutely. Okay.